Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, we're there. We're at the pro course. I know it's been a long time coming in the sense that you've probably been working hard through the foundation course, but I can assure you it will be well worth it if you've done it at the right pace. And actually, I genuinely meant it when I said the longer you take, the better. The more you put yourself, you know, I don't want to lecture anyone. I'm really just trying to help when I say this, but any endeavor that you've ever tried to achieve hasn't come without hard work and a little bit of pain. So I know working through some of those exercises in the foundation course were probably very painful. Have sympathy for me. I traded on the depth of market, albeit profitably, for a significant period of time. So I used to watch those numbers go up and down all day. And whilst I don't advocate you doing it full time, especially now that technology is there, and as I said, machines are really at the forefront of trading the supply columns. Us as human beings have a huge advantage in discretionary elements of trading. So the sort of things that I'm going to show you, which inherently come from the depth of market, but present themselves on a chart and so on and so forth. So things like the profile, etc. But I just want to say, so I am going to move on very quickly to the next slide. But if you've not done the exercises, you will suffer in this section. I don't want to beat around the bush. I'd highly recommend, by all means, watch this introduction if you're curious to see what's in the pro course. Watch this little introduction video, but at the end of it, go back and do all the exercises. Go through the foundation course a second time, a third time if you want. It's really going to help you as you progress through this pro course. If you haven't done the exercises, yeah, you're going to start treating everything I show you as just a tool or an indicator, and that's really going to be to your detriment if you don't really understand what's going on with the tools, because I'm not going to obviously keep referring back to the depth of market. I'm going to go on the assumption going forward that you've done everything at a good pace. You've spent at least 3 months or so doing all the exercises. But again, have a look at what I'm about to show you, even if you haven't, and then go back. If you've done all the exercises, look, fantastic, well done. You're already much further ahead than most traders. You're literally, you're getting there towards what the elite traders have done at the early part of their career. So, congratulations. But I don't want to burst your bubble. But the hard work really does start now, as I'm about to show you. So let's go to the next slide. Now, I know I cover a little bit of this with my head, I think. Can't actually see myself, but I believe I do cover a little bit of this corner. But don't worry about it. It's just the same slide that we had in the foundation course. My point is just this, that so up until now, we've essentially covered this part, right? I'm sure you agree. I'm just gonna, instead of spelling out foundation, I'm just for ease, I'm gonna put FND. So we've done foundation, and obviously here what I haven't included is we did quite a bit of business planning. We looked at some of the players in some detail in terms of different types of institutions, so you know why you're following this path and why this is the correct path for you. But what we're now going to do is we're going to get into a meat of it. So that's this bit, which is the pro. And what I'll tell you from first-hand experience, I went through it myself, is that when you're in a professional trading firm, and I mean even the best of the best professional trading firms, and as you know, I even worked in an investment bank, which is even considered a higher in terms of institutional levels of trading, because obviously they do market making as well and provide markets and so on and so forth. But prop trading is obviously pure risk taking, which is better for us. But my point is this anyway. The tools they teach you are exactly what I'm going to teach you. So you're going to be shown in this section exactly the same things that you would be shown in, the world's best institutions, wherever those are, investment banks, proprietary trading firms. They're all using these tools, volume tools, VWAP, and so on and so forth. And I'll explain why as we go on. But my point is this. What I noticed is, even when I was taught, is it was a little bit in the sense that they'd give you all the teachings and obviously take you through each section, depth of market, As you know, I traded on myself quite profitably for a long period of time. So they show you depth of market, then you move on to things like footprint, cumulative delta, volume profile, VWAP, and so on and so forth. But I found there wasn't much in terms of actually structuring it, um, as to what's the right tool to use first, what approach to use first, so on and so forth. So um, that's what I'm going to do, and I think that's where my experience and what I've actually evolved as into a trader is really going to come to the fore now in the pro course, because as you're about to see on the next slide, and the following slide after, is I've structured everything in the way that I think is optimal for any trader to succeed. So the reason I've said all of this is because I don't want you to think, oh, Envy's distorted what I would be learning in a professional institution. No, actually, what I've done is I'm giving you everything you would learn in a professional institution and more. I'm layering it in terms of how I structure the teaching. So the underlying items that you're going to be learning, exactly the same: VWAP, volume profile. In fact, I'm even going to go into market profile, which institutions still use to this day, and we'll get into that. Delta, footprint, obviously the depth of market, which I've covered already. But it's what it is I've changed the way that we're going to approach it. So you'll still get exactly the same. It's just the way I've structured it. Typical example is depth of market. So, you know, it's important I say this, and just give me 2 minutes and we will move on. A lot of you will have struggled with the depth of market, and I get that. Watching numbers go up and down can be tedious, it's painful, and um, have sympathy for me. I did it for a very long time, albeit obviously very profitably. But earlier part of my career, after I moved away from investment banking and I went into outright risk taking, I did a long time watching and staring the depth of market and making money from that. But what I recognized and what I've noticed that a lot of professional firms haven't adjusted for is that technology has moved on now, and machines, and it's widely available. 80 to 85% of the order flow is now machines. So they have a huge competitive advantage on the supply side. You've seen on the depth of market how quickly it's moving, in terms of the supply changing, fake bids, fake offers, and so on and so forth. As human beings, we just don't have the edge that we used to have 10 years ago. And that's shown. I don't know many traders anymore that are profit. In fact, I don't know any traders that are profitable on the depth of market trading manually. I know quite a few, and I actually have a few friends that make significant sums of money trading on the depth of market using an algorithm. So they've programmed an algorithm, they're very good at programming, and obviously they've programmed an algorithm to read the volume profile and volume at each level and do things accordingly. But it's done by a machine. That program, that algorithm can read in milliseconds the changes that you see in bids and offers on the depth of market. We can't do that. We just don't have the hand-eye coordination to keep up with the machine. It's obvious. That's the same in every point in life. So what I found is, rather than accept that, I look now still, and I did my research before I put this program together, and obviously I spoke to a few contacts that I had to see, since I did my proprietary trader training many years ago to now, has much changed. And I've really noticed through speaking to people in the industry, they haven't changed it. They still want you to sit on the depth of market for 12 months, become profitable. I did say this before. They expect you to get profitable on the depth of market. That can take a year, as you saw. It's a difficult endeavor to master, and I just don't think that that is healthy for you, to be staring at numbers all day. It's not going to be good for you, your soul, your well-being. But much more importantly, I just don't think it's the most efficient way to become profitable, because you're competing against the machines. much more profitable way going forward is using discretion. Use the advantage we have as human beings, which is to be able to make decisions based on dynamic information that's coming through in the moment that may be different to, think about it, if you're a machine, you've been programmed by a human being. Um, and I know I said this would take 2 minutes, but I realize now this is so important. Um, and I hope you agree with me. You're not going to get this information anywhere else. Really, you will never read about this in a book. You're hearing this from someone who's obviously done this for a living for a long time and seen this firsthand. Um, so again, coming back to my point, think about it. If you're a machine, you can only do what you've been programmed to do. So that could be reading bids and offers, so on and so forth. But as you'll notice, I'm going to gravitate us towards the charts and looking at a bird's eye view of things where you can actually start to think analytically. You know, machines can't do that. They can only do things according to set parameters as they've been programmed to do. Us as human beings, the human brain, as you know, is the most powerful organism, not only in the world, in the universe, which means we're able to disseminate information and change direction very quickly. That's discretion. So, and that is where I've been able to, and I know people who've now been able to adapt, because you'll hear a lot of people complain and say, oh, algorithms have taken over the market. No, that's not the case. Yeah, they have, but you need to adapt. Let's use them to our advantage. Let them be experts in their space, which is depth of market, supply side, microscopic, taking ticks here and there. Let us do what we're good at, which is having a bird's eye view, using the bit between our ears, our brain, to analyze things. The best way to do that is what? On a chart, but using value information, using volume information, not indicators, but using all the things that I'm going to teach you and already started teaching you. But essentially, all the volume profile is, if you think about it, is what you see on the depth of market, which I showed you, but there's volume profiles and value, which can be a much wider range. So not just for the day, which you see on the depth of market, it can also be for a longer time period. And this is what we're really going to get into now in the pro course, and why I say the hard work's only just starting, because what you will see is different players have different visions of what value is. And I will get into this in the auction market theory section, but it's really important you understand all of this before I even change the slide, because what you should understand is the transition we're making, why the foundation was necessary, because obviously we had to understand the tools um, that I'm about to show you, and those are really built at the very foundation, at the microscopic level. But what you also need to understand is you don't have an edge there. You have to accept that. Machines have taken over now. You know the technology. Think about it. Your PC, how much faster is it now than 10, 20 years ago? Internet speeds, um, data transfer speeds. The edge now is gone when it comes to very short-term trading on a depth of market. So we really need to take a bird's eye view and look at it, things overall, and that's where we have an advantage. So I hope that made sense. I'm going to bring what I've just said now into a visual, and that's what I mean is that this is something I've developed myself. So let's go on to the next slide. I'm going to bring all of that into a visual for you. Okay, so what we have here is we've got the exact same items that you would learn in a professional trading firm, a proprietary trading firm. Um, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, you've got Google, you can Google it yourself, and you will see you're getting everything. You will not be missing a single item. You're going to learn everything that you do in a proprietary trading firm, except, and I'm going to show you now how I've structured it in a very clever way based on my experience. So you won't find this anywhere else. And that's why I think this program is actually much more powerful than you even going into some of the world's top institutions. But rather than me just saying that, let me show you what I mean by that. So it makes sense. Let me show you first what exactly you would learn if you walked into a proprietary trading firm. So you've already covered depth of market, and as you know, actually, they're going to keep you on that much longer than what I did. You're more than welcome to try and become profitable on depth of market, but like I said, I think that um, some of these professional firms really need to accept that times have changed. As I said, I'm surprised they're taking so long about it, but um, it is what it is, right? Sometimes people get stuck in their ways, industries get stuck in their ways, as we've seen in the retail high street. You know, online is taking over, technology is taking over. See, is another great example where you have to adapt to technology. So let's not get stuck on doing what they're doing, and let's move into really, I was tempted to say 21st century, but obviously it's a little bit further than that. I would say what, the new decade, 2020 onwards, right? um, so if you walked into a firm, you would be doing essentially the depth of market, as I said, for a longer period. You would at some stage move on to auction market theory. um, this is just a little nuance which I won't worry about now, but we will come back to it. Acceptance and rhythm, it's something I'm going to show you about the market, which you don't necessarily get taught, but I think it's an important structural element that you're going to get as a bonus. You would get taught about market profile, which is very, very important in professional trading circles. Volume profile, which is exactly the same thing but using volume instead of time, but we'll cover all of that, so don't worry about it. You get taught about the VWAP. They do a little bit of fundamentals. I don't really use them much myself. I love fundamentals. You know, I find it very interesting to read about economics, etc., but more for enjoyment, to find out how's my country doing, that I live in, um, or countries around the world, how are they doing, that kind of thing I think is very interesting. But in terms of actually trading, I don't necessarily use it much, but I may touch upon it. Um, and then what else is there? So there's the footprint. Obviously, this has just repeated itself, and I'll explain why. Footprint, depth of market, and then cumulative delta. And then you might do some psychology work. You definitely do journaling. They're massive on journaling. Psychology, there's a little bit of it, but you'll be surprised how little psychology is relative to actually learning. Because in fact, let's come back to psychology on the psychology slide, because I have a slide where I'm just going to talk about psychology for a few minutes. But so there's all the things you would be learning in a proprietary trading firm. All I've done is I've structured it differently. So what I've recognized is the way that we want to develop Edge is I really want to build you up from a bird's eye perspective and use all the skills you have as a human being to your advantage. So what do I mean by that? So look what I've written here. Developing Edge starts with being able to develop a hypothesis for the trading day context. So what you will notice, if you know any prop trader, as they're called, who works in a private trading firm, any institutional trader has a hypothesis for the day. What they will do, I do it myself, and you are taught this, create a hypothesis for the day. So you will see me sometimes in some of my Discord chats or etc. putting some areas of interest. How do we determine where do we want to trade for the day? What's our map? Context is the map. You know, if you're going to go for, I don't know if you've done hiking before, I love to go hiking, and you have a map. If you don't have a map, you're going to be so lost. I don't know if you've gone hiking in the woods before with no map, no chance. You're going to be completely lost. So that's what the context is. It's the roadmap. It's looking at the market and deciding for the day, almost knowing several hours in advance where you're going to be going in terms of direction or targets, those sort of things. Absolutely crucial. But what I've never seen done before really is organizing it in a structure where all you're doing is learning context. That's what we're going to do. So basically, what I've done, as part of the G7FX Pro course, is I've split everything into stages. So stage one is going to be looking purely at context. And believe me, is such a huge element. Without context, nothing. You can use footprints, you can watch stuff on the depth of market, and you're going to see the stuff I've showed you before, like absorption, so on and so forth. It's going to happen everywhere. There's no edge there. You're going to see absorbing, you're going to see buyers coming in, you're going to see sellers and buyers getting trapped. You're going to see all that stuff, but you're going to see it everywhere on the chart. It's going to drive you completely bananas trying to figure out which sellers or buyers getting trapped is the one that you should actually um, take account of or use to trade off. Now, that is obviously where you get the bird's eye view, develop a hypothesis for the day. Absolutely crucial. I would say it's by far the most important thing that you can develop as a trader. So that's why I've created a section, and I've decided that the best way um, to teach you guys is to teach you in the way that I approach my day. So that's what I'm doing. Context, always looking at context. I'll spend time on that. And what that means is, so this is why I hope you can see I ticked off all the things that you would learn in a proprietary trading firm, because all I've done is I've taken the individual elements and I've put them into sections. So you're going to learn all the same stuff: auction market theory, market profile, volume profile, VWAP, fundamentals, but I've bunched them up into section one. So we're going to talk about all these things in terms of developing context. Okay, stage two. So this is obviously overall context, roadmap of the whole market. Once we've got that and we know, okay, today this is what we want to do, we want to dig deeper. We want to zoom in really to looking at, essentially it's looking at value. I talked about value before, and value is nothing magical, mythical. Value exists, as you know, everywhere. Amazon, eBay, every item in the world is an asset. It's the same as the pound. It has value. So all this is just looking at overall value. So different players and how different players with different time horizons are viewing value and how we can make that into a hypothesis for the day. Apologies, my writing's terrible there. This is looking at intraday value. How can we use intraday value to take positions into overall value? Okay, so it's zooming down. So that's stage two. So now I'm going to show you volume profile VWAP again, but as part of an intraday framework, which I'm going to give you. And that's where you're going to start to develop edge. So I hope you can see how you're going to start to be able to develop trading ideas. Because I know it's been a long time coming and you must have been thinking, Envy's been making us do all these exercises. But this is why I wanted to put this section together. So you could see, look, there is an end goal. I'm giving you like a framework. It's not going to be a specific A plus B must equal C. Guys, you might as well use technical indicators if you've got that mindset. It doesn't exist. But I'm going to give you tools where you can start to develop an amazing analytical understanding and start using your discretion to develop trading ideas and actually start getting into the market and testing those trading ideas using a framework. And that's very much the intraday value framework, which I'm going to show you in stage two of the pro course. And then we're going to go into stage three. And this is where we've done the depth of market already. We'll be looking at footprint, cumulative delta. So this is a really interesting point, and this is another reason I really wanted to put a long section here. And I know I've been talking to you for a long time, and I apologize, and we're nearly done. But look, it's absolutely crucial that I put this in here because you'll notice I started here and I put module 6 footprint. What I would like you to do is not do the footprint until much later on. The reason I put it is because, look, I accept on my social media, I'm showing footprint and, I don't want people to think I've misled them and they're desperate to learn about the footprint. So fine, go and do the footprint if you really want to, but it's not going to help you trade. Can you see 5%? Guys, it is all about context. Context is king. Without context, you got no trades. You will see how I trade all the time on my Discord and with my examples that I give. I've got levels. I know. If I've got level 100 pips away, I don't want to sit there watching a footprint and a depth of market going up and down. Why? I've got better things to do. It's meaningless. I'm not going to learn anything. I'm not going to, it's not going to achieve anything. It's just static on a TV. It might as well be me staring at static. It's pointless. All the footprint and depth of market is going to help me do is fine tune positions. Depth of market I don't really use anymore. Footprint I use more in the futures markets like stocks and oil. Um, and as I've mentioned in the footprint section, I don't really use it for currency so much. I will obviously help you develop some edge in currencies without footprint later on. Um, what I do use a lot is cumulative delta to fine tune. That's all these things are. Now you might be wondering, well, why did we do the depth of market? Well, at the end of the day, guys, all we did is we built out all the stuff we're looking at our bird's eye view, but at a granular level, we built back up and now we're going to build back down. And that was absolutely crucial. Why? Because the building blocks of all of this section here, come from depth of market. What you'll realize, and I don't want to get into this here, is that all volume profile is on a chart, on a big long-term horizon, is the depth of market on a chart. You might not understand this right now, and maybe you do, because you've understood what market orders are, but market orders being spit out all the time, a volume profile is developing. The only difference is when you're developing a hypothesis, you're looking at um, volume profiles which have developed over huge periods of time, still to come from the depth of market. That's why we needed to do depth of market, but that's it, job's done. Now let's actually try and make some trading decisions, try and develop some hypothesis, as I said, edge. And we can only do that by now zooming out and creating the roadmap from which we want to fine tune entries. So really, it's a very small part of the process. These things are much more important. We need a map first before we actually do the zooming in and figure out exactly, in terms of exact entry points, things like that. If you think about it, a good example is um, if you've got a chart, terrible drawing of a chart going up and down, you know, there's going to be depth of market fine tuning that you can do there, you can do it 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 there. But what if the best opportunities aren't until this section? Do you see what I mean? Then you're going to be fine tuning what? It's all over the place. What you need to do is get yourself into a little section, of about 10, 20 pips in FX terms or ticks in futures terms, your areas where you want to be trading, and then fine tune that down into, okay, this is where I'll enter, so on and so forth. That's why it's only 5%. I hope you can see that. And that's why, if you can, avoid doing the footprint section. I know it's next. I've put it as module 6, but I've done that because I know people get a bit starry-eyed by all the social media footprint stuff and want to desperately learn it. But if you can avoid it, but have a look if you want. But otherwise, I just want you to know it's really not that big. Then journaling psychology, I'm going to add as a supplementary section. I don't know, obviously at this stage I haven't built all this out. When you come to watch this, I may have actually built all of it out. I don't necessarily agree with how some professional firms introduce journaling, and I'm going to talk about that in the next slide. Sorry, the slide after next. So rather than talking about it now, let's just jump to the next slide. Okay, so this is basically my own framework using every single tool you would get in a private trading firm. I've organized it. Um, and end of the day, I'm not trying to sell you anything because you've already bought the course. So the reason I'm telling you this is because it's true. You won't find this anywhere else in any professional trading firm. They will not organize it for you in the way that I have. My suggestion is print this out and have this in front of you at all times. What I'll do is, because I know my head is covering this and I don't want you looking at a picture of me all day. It's not pleasing for anyone to start their day with that. So what I'll do is I'll put a PDF or whatever picture of this in the download section, and I want you to have this every morning you start your day, because what it is I want you to approach the market in a calm and collected manner. Take a bird's eye view. I don't want you to see all the action and get frenetic as you may have been doing as a retail trader. I'm not saying all of you have. I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush. I'm just saying that if that's how you approach the market, this is going to help you take a step back. So context we spoke about, right? It's 70% of it. Developing a hypothesis for the day. That's why I want you to recognize this number is 70% of your job. If you can't develop a hypothesis, all of this is just, you might as well go home. It's meaningless. You need to know what you're doing that day before you even start thinking about entering, and all of that is secondary. It's tertiary even. So you've got to remember context. This pyramid, I've developed this pyramid. I want you to print this out. As I said, we're going to do that in stage 1. Then the intraday is quite a big element of it. But after you've got your hypothesis for the day, I'm going to start showing you a framework where you can start pinpointing. If you've got an idea that, okay, this is where I generally think value is likely to shift today, how do you get in? How do you actually develop a bit more of a more zoomed in framework, because you're doing it intraday and so on and so forth. So that's going to be stage 2. And then, so this is, obviously if you're day trading or holding for even a couple of days, this is a very good framework for a couple of days. If you're a longer term trader, you can almost use a lot of the things I'm going to show you here, because I know I'll get questions about longer term trading. And don't worry, as we developed context, you'll see that actually you don't need this, and you probably won't even need this if you're a longer term trader. You won't use this as much. If you want to hold stuff for a week or longer, you'll be using much more of the broader context. But even for day trading, context on a broader framework is absolutely crucial. All this does is it zooms things in for us. And then order flow is a very small part of it. Really, I know guys who are amazing at developing hypotheses for the day, amazing at understanding intraday context, and don't even look at order flow and do incredibly well. I don't know anyone who just watches order flow and does well. Like I said, it's maybe 10 years ago, okay, there were guys on the depth of market when machines weren't around, but it just doesn't exist. And in fact, go and Google it for yourself. The only ones that I know of are in jail now because they spoofed the market. So, at the end of the day, I think proof's in the pudding. You just don't get much. I'm sure there's, a handful out there, but yeah, it's very rare to see people making money on the depth of market or using footprint on its own, unless you have the obvious caveat to that is unless they're using some sort of algorithm that they've programmed themselves or it's assisting them in some way. But obviously that's not the purpose of this pro course or the G7FX course. This is to turn you as an individual into a professional trader, and you're not going to be using algorithms and machines or programs to do that. So definitely no edge there. So it's really 5%. That's why I want you to have this. So it's a reminder to you every day. As soon as you start getting too obsessed with order flow and microscopic things, whoa, take a step back, because it's very dangerous to do that unless you've developed strong context, both on a broad term basis and then obviously on an intraday basis, for which I'm going to show you framework for. And then you've got to add psychology in. It's about 5% of it. You might be saying, oh, I've heard psychology is 50%. Guys, utter rubbish. It's all retail myths, rubbish, and I'm going to tell you why. But just take my word for it for the moment, and I'll come back to it. I'll add something about this. Ideally, my opinion, you want to not start journaling until you've really understood the framework. So understand the framework. Then once you start developing hypotheses, etc., then start journaling. In my opinion, that's when journaling really comes to the forefront. I'm a massive fan of journaling. I did it religiously for several years. I don't do it so much now, but I did my time. But I'm a massive advocate of journaling. I think it's absolutely crucial part of the process. Psychology, not so much. Because what it is when you develop edge and you become um, competent and you know how the market works, structure, believe me, psychology, it sort of takes care of itself. The reason in retail circles they talk so much about psychology, think about it, is because it's very clever marketing technique to blame you for things going wrong. Think about it. Someone showing you these squiggly lines or whatever nonsense that you get taught, right? Which, as I've already shown you, makes no sense, right? It's like, I don't want to repeat the point and sound like a broken record, but at the end of the day, when does Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury's, Walmart, Costco, Amazon, Microsoft, any company in the world, if you ask them how they determine fair value, if you say, oh, why don't you try using a MACD RSI, they're going to laugh at you. RSI, trend line, whatever. Guys, it's not used, right? It makes no sense. So my point is this: when obviously you're being taught in retail circles, those guys know that what they're showing you has no edge. That's why they don't show you audited results. There's no edge. It's very break even, right? Or as you know, you win some, you lose some. So what they need to do is they need to develop something that shifts the blame onto you, right? And you know this because when you're taking a trade, how many times have you been told by an educator or someone else, oh, it was your psychology. It was you. You didn't hold the position long enough. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. Weak. Your mind. Go and do meditation. Go and do this. Go and do that. Guys, can you see? It's just a marketing trick. It's a mind trick to make you think you're wrong. No, it's nonsense. It's because there's no edge, right? Once you've got edge, psychology will take care of the rest. Not to say I'm against doing things that help you develop a better mindset. Look, you may not know this, and don't worry, the video is about to end soon, but you may not know this, but I spent a long period of time um, in a monastery, living life as a monk. I've done all of it. I've done Vipassana, I've meditated 14 hours a day. I've done all those things. So I'm not against them, you know. I've done them more extremes than anyone you know out there. So I'm definitely not against that. And it had huge benefits for me. But in trading, at the end of the day, you either have an edge or you don't. Yeah, it helps to some extent. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's important once you develop an edge. That's why I say it's 5%. Develop a true edge, and then you will know whether you can implement it or not. And if you're struggling to implement it once you've proved to yourself that you have an edge, then by all means introduce some psychology, but don't introduce it too early on in your development stage. It's just going to mess with your head and make you think that you're not doing well because of your mindset, when actually you're not doing well because um, you potentially, well, in my opinion, you don't understand the structure of the market. You need to start looking um, at what you're actually using to trade and develop edge, the techniques, rather than blaming your mindset, because otherwise you will get into this dangerous cycle of trying so many things, but every time they don't work, you blame your own mindset, and you can see you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to go around in a circle. So what I would suggest is about high time, put the psychology to the side and actually start recognizing, actually, maybe I don't know how the market works. Let me understand that first. When you get there, and I understand the market. Okay, I'm not able to execute sometimes. Let me then work on edge. Okay, final slide. And I do apologize, a bit of scratching at the door is my dog. I've left her out, as you know, the snoring. But she does get a little bit upset again. Apologize for that. Okay, so final slide, which I'm not really going to talk through. I've literally just taken the items and put them on here for you. So again, I'll put a printout of this. I recommend that you print this out. If you want, don't necessarily need all this stuff, but just thought it'd be good for reference. So you can see this is going to be stage one, which I'm taking you through in the pro course, which is the contextual element. We're going to show you how to develop a hypothesis the way that I do it. Then we're going to give you a framework to actually trade the hypothesis, and then you can even fine tune that slightly further. All right, so that is, something that I've developed. You won't see this anywhere else being laid out like this. It's giving you a very clear path to how you are going to be able to execute from building a hypothesis to executing the edge. So it's the full, basically, path laid out for you in terms of how to go about it in order, but also importance. 70%, 20%, and then 5% is 95%, and then obviously you've got the other 5% which you have here, which I'm gonna put in somewhere. Haven't decided exactly where, but I'll do that. So I hope that was helpful. Really want to wish you the best, for the rest of the course, and I'm sure we'll obviously talk again either outside of the course, or I'll do some more detailing about how approaches and how to go about things. Even though I'm going to be doing more specific learning elements, I will have some advice for you throughout the course. So yeah, looking forward to get started. See you at stage one, guys. Have a great day.